saw somebody do it the other night. It worked for them.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We are live, and or at least we'll be taped. I'm not sure. There are a couple things that we're not really going to get into that's in your booklet. The water issue we'll cover when we get into our all the information we get back from our studies, because that's going to be all tied together. So there's no point really getting into that at this moment, though we certainly will get into it.
And that's a year away, phase 2 is. Is that what
that's correct, yeah. And certainly there will be some things that will be brought forward that may have to be done between now and then. But those things really, even if they are, in my opinion, will have to be kicked back to the consultant and see if that ties into kind of the direction that they're going. Because that's going to be
So you're saying those projects that we've got for water, we're not going to look at them?
I just don't see any point at the moment in doing that. And it's another budgeting cycle and another location, and I think today we'll just deal with the things that are not in water, wastewater, storm, and reclaimed water. And other than that, that's the only direction that I have. So I, as far as schedule out, here what are we going to talk about? So I think we ought to have a little brief discussion about how you want to progress tonight, how you want to handle it. You want to go through the items in each of these categories, but we could be here for days if you go through all that, or would you like to ask specific questions on specific projects, or obviously you could go through all of these, and certainly administrative fire and parks is a little bit more extended, but streets and engineering always has the majority of stuff for sure. But it's it's your meeting, so how do y'all want to handle it? Yeah.
Question. I wonder if we could get some kind of projections about how much we're going to have in the budget for projects, as far as our, what gets us up to our.
Well, we can give you a general as to where we are today, I think, and kind of what's been talked about and approved but not funded. But I think if you've looked at your forecast, you will see that if we do the things that we've projected, that there's not a lot of discretionary dollars for the next couple of years unless things change.
And that's kind of the point, that why should we vote for $20 million, $18 million projects if we're really not going to be able to fund that?
Well, I think it's good to rank the projects no matter what. I think it's important for us as a board to say, there's a project out here we may not start for 7 years, but it's good to have them. It gives staff an understanding as to where we are from a priority standpoint. It also tells the public, because we really, and Ann and I had that conversation not 10 minutes ago, we really set our capacity. It's this board of mayor and aldermen that set the capacity, and we are currently living at a certain income level, and we can establish certain amounts of debt, and we can do a certain amount of projects. We have the ability, if we have a political inclination, to change that. So it's hard for them to tell us what that is. It's really for us to tell them. So, as an example, if we feel like a project is hugely important, it's up to us to figure out a way to do it. And That's our decision, not their decision. So I still think ranking, and I think it's very important for the community to be able to look and see what we think is important. And it doesn't necessarily matter that it's going to get funded, but I think they need to know what we think, and if they disagree, they can let us know. Otherwise, we'll be back sort of to the way it was happening before, that it would just sort of magically appear. And it'd be like that secret sidewalk list. And, I don't think that's doing a service to staff or to the public. But, to say that we've got $10 million to spend in the next year is really, we've pretty much committed past that at the moment, based upon where we are from an income level and a policy level.
I thought we had already prioritized. I thought that's what this is.
We're going, but we always said that we would do it, we would reprioritize every year.
What
Because
did we
things
just
might
do
change.
then?
A year ago.
You did it about a little over a year ago. You
Yeah.
did the major capital projects. We went through an exercise related to small capital projects because we were trying to target that sort of smaller annual allocation for small projects. That took us a pretty long time to get through that element. That's what we just finished up most recently. But you haven't looked at the large capital investment projects for over a year.
And you did sit through that, because you weren't on the board at that point. That's another reason why we should continue to do that, because we change. And so we did do, Margaret did, as Eric said, the small projects, but not the large projects. So there may be projects in here, personally, I know what these projects are pretty much, and, I don't see a whole lot of discussion there. Though we may ask staff what they think. I think that's important. Margaret, you haven't been part of this, so that's important. But, as an example, let's use McEwen Phase 4 as an example. We had a lot of conversations about McEwen after the zoning of the schools. And so people may relook it. They may not, but you all may, and I'm included, may look at how we prioritize McEwen. And every year, something may happen that can change how we look at priorities and what needs to be done. So I think it needs to be a continuous program. It needs to be done every year. And it may not change. The list may be, my guess is it won't change significantly, but it might change slightly, could change significantly based upon something that might happen. And so this isn't a funding plan. This is purely a priorities plan. And then once it's done, then it's up to us to say, I think it's up to staff, Eric and his staff, to say, okay, based upon based upon what we've got committed, here's what we can spend as of right now based upon our policies. If you want it to be different, then we've got to change something. It's up to us to do that, and we may not want to do that. But I think it's in our hands, not in their hands. It's up to us to tell them what to do, not the other way around. And that's why we're doing this.
Well, the Sperry would be one example of why you want to go back and redo what we're doing.
I agree.
Because that
was
freed up or opened up $4.5 million.
Well, it ceased to spend that much
Yeah.
money.
Okay.
Because it was money that we hadn't spent, nor borrowed for, nor anything else. So, but it did change. It does change priorities, because that was one of our priorities.
Yep.
So, and every year, I would guess, every year something will cause us to relook at this, and to some degree, I would bet it might change a little bit every single year. So again, I think I want to stress, this is not a funding meeting. This is purely looking at the projects, asking questions about the projects, and then just in your own mind, listing the priorities, and then the group merges, and basically we come up with a plan. Then we have to decide if there's money to do it, and how we do it, and this and that. I think this has to come first, and that's what we started two or 3 years ago, and I think it's, all in all, I'm sure we can make some changes to it, but it's been a pretty good program.
I know I just came in for a second, so I might have missed this, but this, the sheet that we just got, these priority rankings,
This is current.
that's correct.
It's what you did last
year.
Well, I thought like McEwen Phase 4 was number 7. It moved up from number 47 to number 7.
Bev, I think that number 47 was because they were in alphabetical order. It was not number 47 in the ranking. It was just in alphabetical order. It was number
But
47.
when we reprioritized, McEwen Phase 4 got prioritized as number 7 priority.
McEwen Phase 4?
Phase 3.
No, Phase 4 was not prioritized.
Phase 3.
Now, somewhere along the list, when we redid that, we only did the...
We've only listed the top 10 priorities as we voted on last year. McEwen Phase 4 was not a part of the top 10.
We only did the top 10, wasn't it?
Well, we can take number 4 off, can't we? Number 4.
It's gone.
Beautiful. She's absolutely beautiful.
Look at 3. 3 was
Well-
better than
10, 29.
But we can take that off. I just recall McEwen Phase 4 being moved up way up.
September 22nd, whenever this was done.
Voted
Yeah. I know it was voted on numerous times and things were changed.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, we voted
Eric.
3 or 4 times.
Yes, we did.
On
The priorities.
September 22nd, McEwen Phase 4 was number 7.
And 3 was phased.
Was number
Wait a
7.
minute, is that not?
Okay, so why is it number whatever
So
here?
this includes some that were funded previously as sort of givens, like your Mac Hatcher funding,
Right.
et cetera. So I think this is a more accurate listing, the one that Eric's got up there. Because your funding plan included doing Hillsborough, Columbia, McEwen 3,
Exactly.
and then we
And then,
went
so,
to Third Avenue Extension,
I sure didn't think we got that.
and that was as far as we went
Eric, you're
funding
telling me
wise.
number 7. Now, what are you telling me? Because I remember...
Budget 129 is the date.
That's when it was
That's this one.
But I remember distinctly being number 7.
No, I do remember that.
I think the one on the screen is more accurate than the one you have in front of you.
This was from September 22nd,
It's an older version.
09,
Yes.
and it was number 7.
Yeah, I think that's a final priority list.
And then, why does it get knocked down to number whatever it was?
What you're telling is you have
I
a
think
earlier
we printed
version.
the wrong version.
Can we get a
Can we get a
fresh,
new one?
yeah,
Because
can we
this
get a
is-
fresh one?
I looked at this the other day and I went, this doesn't compute to me. This
What's
is
on-
not,
let me see
and I
what's on
can't
the
read it. It's just difficult to read.
Is one a priority list, another one is a funding list?
No, I think this is after we made some
You
modifications.
made modifications.
I picked up the wrong one when we printed it.
Okay, can we get the new one? I know, I was looking back and I had several too.
Yeah, I
Can we get the one?
Yeah.
We'll get you printed that newer version.
The one I just
final
pulled
version.
up, the one I pulled up on the screen before this is what's on the webpage.
Okay.
It's got McEwen Phase 4 as
Number 7.
number 7.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's on the webpage.
But
Well,
we
but
need to get
still,
you
we
printed
need to
out
get it
the
right
right
now.
We'll print
version.
the right one, get it to
Well, if we
Sorry.
want to just talk about something while we're doing that, I'm here anyway.
Not at least on the
Yeah,
top
yeah.
10 printed out right now, top 12.
And what can we talk about while
There's a newer version of this, so take a big X. This is not it.
Don't everybody have a good Halloween?
It was pumpkin fest good, I was out of town, so
It was huge.
that's great. That's great.
Lamb, and the chili was great, the barbecue was good.
Who won the chili?
I think Meredith did.
Meredith won the judge's
What number
choice.
was that? Against the grain one.
Meredith won the judge's choice, and Against the Grain, which was number 1, won the people's choice.
But they came in second with
But I wonder what
Who won the barbecue?
was
And I don't, there were so many categories.
on the
for
list.
barbecue.
So everybody won, some except for that one that tasted awful.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I don't know who it was.
We may be recording.
They had burnt the chili and decided to scrape the bottom part out of the
Yeah.
front part. Because I've made things that tasted just like that.
We know.
And served
Because
it
of
again
that.
as well.
And, you know, when that gas flame goes too hot
We
and
know.
you know,
We know what happens.
anyway. Well,
We'll discuss, have we paid Columbia Avenues, have we paid the invoices on Columbia Avenue? Have we got that?
No, because I was looking, that's going to be, isn't that something that we've still got to issue the bond on?
What's that
See,
amount to be?
I'm not, I'm still not sure about what we've issued bonds for that we haven't spent.
Well,
And then, yeah, that's right.
You can answer. Russ, why don't you come up and sit there in your chair while I'm typing this real quick?
We get 17, 18 million in Columbia.
I was thinking Hillsborough Road.
Oh, thank you. Boy, I'm going to freak out again.
So I'm the substitute entertainment while Eric's gone, is that?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was thinking. Okay.
Why don't I just focus in on the bond issues that we've done?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I think you have a general idea of what was in those particular bond issues. The most recent.
Not really, though, tell us.
Well, let's go backwards. The one that we just completed was a refund. It had no new money in it whatsoever. So it didn't have anything to do with this. The issue that we just finished in September. In May and June, we issued the recovery zone bonds, and those were to cover Columbia, 3rd Avenue, and the portion of Hillsborough from 96 up to Del Rio. And we've got, I have some numbers for you of what is left in those issues. But the question was asked, Eric, while you were gone, about Columbia Avenue. We have the contract essentially encumbered for that. So if you take the total amount that we have, that we issued, which was about 15 million in bonds, we have 13 of it left. But if you
13
take-
million left.
What's that?
13 million.
Let's start again. The total amount of issue was
15.7.
This is recovery zone.
This is recovery zone.
Right.
You've got 13.1 million left, but we have some contracts, the largest of which is Columbia, that reduces that amount to 11.5.
11.5.
And that 11.5 was targeted for 3rd Avenue, and what the balance that's left for Hillsborough.
Okay, so it's committed.
Correct. And borrowed. And actually in the bank, ready to be spent, and the clock is ticking as far as the time that we have to spend it. Right. That's kind of the easy issue. The more difficult issue is the 44 million that was borrowed in December of last year. And that covered a great number of projects, many of which were already underway. Over 20 million of that was already spent on prior contracts, prior projects, mostly Carruthers, portions of McEwen, the remainder of the part that we had to pay on the Nissan portion of Carruthers, extending McEwen from Cool Springs back to where it hits the center area. There were a whole lot of projects that were in there. In addition to that, some of that money, the remainder of that money, was to cover McEwen Phase 3, Carruthers Phase 2, which was already under contract.
What?
Phase 2.
And Carruthers Phase 2, was that just down to 96?
That was from Liberty to McEwen.
Right.
That just
There was approximately $9 million. Some of that had been borrowed on a previous issue, but the lion's share of it came in on that. Now, I can't recite all of the different projects that were covered by that 44 million, but of the 44 million, there's 11.3 left.
44.11?
No, 44.0 million.
And that was from?
That was a bond
all
issue in
bonds.
December,
Okay.
No, that was December 08.
December 09.
I'm sorry.
December 09.
Okay, so out of that 44 million, then we've got
11.4 million, let's round it up, because it's very close. But we also have some commitments that are, if you will, they're the tail of these projects, like Carruthers, McEwen, some of these other things, that reduce that by another 1.6 million. So the balance that is actually left in that account is almost 9.8 million. But included in that, when you did the capacity model, was completing the McEwen part, which has not yet been bid.
Correct.
So,
McEwen Phase 3.
Phase 3. So there is a healthy portion of that 9 million that is essentially already committed.
Do we not know what portion?
Well, we can look.
We haven't bid it yet, so we don't know.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I wanted to think.
But,
Well, they're showing 7.3 in this fiscal year, so
yeah,
I'm assuming they'll be pretty close to that.
but we didn't spend $5 million this year on it.
No, we haven't bid it yet, so.
Now, Russ, you said, you said 40 million was gone in December '09, and then we had 11.4 million left. And all that other portion went where?
Well, $20 million of it was stuff that we had already done, that
So we
we
kind of pay it back,
reimbursed ourselves.
right.
Okay, done. And
Police stuff, some other things that we, in fact, we authorize ourselves to do that occasionally,
Okay,
to
yeah.
reimburse ourselves for that.
Right.
So 20 million of it was for that, which then, and then there was another, whatever that number is, that paid for Carruthers Phase 2, some of McEwen Phase 3, design work and stuff, I believe.
Right.
And so right now, there is
Okay.
9.8 million
Oh, wait a minute, then he said it was 11.4, and then another...
minus 1.6 that was miscellaneous.
So you've got these various bond funds out here that tie to unbid but committed to projects, such as Hillsborough
Right.
and McEwen 3.
And that's out of what? Out of this?
And Third
That's what
Avenue.
these funds will go towards, the projects that you committed to in your funding plan. We move forward with the most efficient approach we could to fund those projects, which involved some debt issuance and specifically targeting projects that were in the recovery zone that could help us get those Super Buy America bonds, which included a portion of Hillsborough, Columbia, and the Third Avenue North Extension.
And that's going to come out of this?
That's all, no, that came out of the May issue of 15.7 million.
Okay.
So those are all eligible projects to use for that.
And the money, and those are recovery zone dollars, which means they have to go to the recovery zone, which we designated as Third Avenue, Columbia, and Hillsborough.
And we can give you this bond summary. I think we did distribute this at one point, but we can redistribute that to you. The other thing we talked about as a Budget and Finance Committee a couple months ago took our funding plan and looked at what really has happened to this point. Things like eliminating the SPUE from the funding plan, what we actually sold debt at, the rate, because we made assumptions about what it would cost us, but we were fortunate in that we were able to sell it at lower interest rates. The true cost of projects, a few of the projects that are in here, such as Columbia, were all factored into that, and that gave us approximately $9 million to the good when we compared the original funding plan to the reality as we knew it with those items. Now, we targeted about $1 million of that to go towards the Nickel Mill project. Okay, so that takes that 9 to somewhere around 8 million when you just compare the knowns that have happened to that funding plan. The flip side of that is we have not bid and do not know what it's going to cost us to do the two biggest projects in your funding plan, which are McEwen 3 and Hillsborough Road. So you may add to that number, or you may need to use some of that number depending on how those bids come in, what that looks like. Now, we try to be conservative in the numbers we put in here, but we don't know till we go out and find out where we are. So to answer the question about capacity, we can't answer it definitively. We can give you some points of comparison to the funding plan you approved a year ago and what has happened since then, but there are still elements of the projects that need to move forward, and the biggest chunk of your funding in terms of bidding hasn't happened yet with those two big projects.
And we're only bidding on...
Could I also say something? Third Avenue, we need to talk about that because I'm looking here on the Third Avenue extension, and it's showing, like $3.9 million, but whenever I look on the, on the CIP, it's saying it was like $7 million.
You have an update on the cost, that is correct.
Okay, so where is that?
In the CIP book.
So this is the most,
In the CIP book is the updated cost based on what we have.
9 to 7 million.
Well, the 3.9, I'm not real sure where that came from. I think that came from consultant, and it is updated cost now, so.
Now, is that fully roadway cost versus
It is.
some other elements?
Yes.
That, I think, is the other part of that discussion.
The 7, I think, including all the elements of it. And
When are you
we were
bidding?
looking.
When are we bidding?
January, February.
Third Avenue.
Are we still talking about having parallel parking on both sides of a two-lane road?
Nothing on the design has changed since the plans were developed.
Although we're going to bid it out with elements, components, so that you could kind of separate it out. We had committed to do
Well,
that.
I think we need to look at that, because that may be something where, I mean, as I said, what page is it on in here? I've looked at.
Page 3 in streets.
I think we agreed to look at that separately.
are we locked into Third Avenue because of the recovery bond commitments though? Or is that still, are we locked into the Third Avenue project because we stated that would be recovery bond money?
No, you've got multiple projects that are eligible. Hillsborough and Third Avenue North Extension are both
But would have to
in
be one of
recovery
those.
zone. You're going to have to spend the recovery money in one of those two projects, one or both.
Now, this has got a different number on it.
I got 5.9.
Yeah.
Only went up 2 million.
Well, that was down from 7 point, whatever it was.
Yeah, because when we brought this forward, I thought we brought this number down to reflect more the street component than some of the other elements. When we were fitting this into the funding plan a year ago, but
Where's the $7 million that you're referring to? Where's
That
that?
came from your reports in the CIP committee, whenever you're talking about the status.
Okay, that number came from, as David talked about, that number came from the consultant with the overall project cost estimate, which did include park elements and things like that. The original $3 million or whatever was in there last year, that was the old cost. The $7 million includes park elements and other things. The $5 million that's in the book here, that is what we have updated this year to hopefully include just the street. And there are some park elements that we put in there that, as Eric talked about, they will be bid as alternates, where if you choose not to fund those, they can be removed.
Yeah, but they're all going to be separated out. So we can look at those.
But now I notice right here, now that I'm looking at streets, page 3 on streets, after all the other stuff here, it says that the cross-section would be standard 2 lanes with sidewalks. As I recall, the previous said the 2 lanes with 2 parallel parking lanes on either side of it.
The previous book said that?
I believe so. I went one time and looked at, I may have even, this is my CIP thing, notebook where I went in there.
No, it still says
Parking would be considered other appurtenances, actually.
Oh, okay. I've got right here parallel parking on both sides.
That is what the design has, that is what came out of the sessions with the public, et cetera, stakeholders, charrettes, the whole 9 yards as far as what was needed, because parking is going to be needed for that area.
Okay, but if it's going to be a fourth of a mile, and it's going to cost $6 million.
Maybe not so much, maybe it won't.
That's the new estimate.
Well,
5.9.
Yep.
We need to go back and look at how we arrived at the 3.9. There's a reason we had that number, and we need to look at that.
Columbia Avenue came in a whole lot
We did not.
cheaper than what we thought.
Well, again, we've updated the cost based, and we're doing cost with not necessarily people are hungry for work, et cetera. We're looking at costs that, we don't want to give you a cost that's coming in like a half of what you
It
normally think
does
of.
not need to be under it, that's for sure.
That doesn't happen, and that's what John, that's what John was referring to earlier. We're conservative with numbers, we think.
Exactly.
Because these
We're hoping
costs
it'll come in
recently,
less, but-
for instance, Royal Oaks 96 intersection came in so much less. We can't predict or estimate that
No,
kind
but
of
we need to
stuff.
plan for the larger number.
Right.
But then again, if you're still talking about $4 million for a fourth of a mile, seems very, very high to me. I mean, where let's face it, does that have anything to do with increasing capacity, except in a very, very minor way? I mean, I'm looking at
We
this.
could stack for a fourth of a mile.
Thank you.
Does it include some stormwater?
There's stormwater elements that's going to help with the stormwater runoff from the downtown area, et cetera. So it's
Bridge is a big cost.
there is a big bridge.
Sewer, it's got utilities in it. It's-
But we won't argue capacity, but if you'd have been downtown Saturday, you'd see that the 3rd Avenue North Extension would have helped tremendously.
But let me tell you, I'm looking at our major thoroughfare plan and the places where they show the bad levels of service. That's not one of them. I mean, there's so many places on here that show a level of service or D or E that, for example, Mac Hatcher south of 96, Hillsborough Road, which, we do have on our list, but it's going to take years for it to get done. It's been on the list for years and years and years. 96 West is one of those bad levels of service. I named Hillsborough already. Actually, 96 East, too. Columbia Avenue, which, after we spent that money on it, zero capacity added there. Not that we could in the places where we did.
But what we're working with, as has been stated previously, is your priority and your funded projects. So
My point is that a priority? It is.
It is right there.
So that's why we're doing this.
You were not probably one of those people who voted on it, so that's why you're probably still having some of those.
Oh, indeed. But I'm also saying a priority of mine that has been since I've been an alderman is doing something about the bad levels of service that we have on the existing roads.
Like McEwen.
And by the way,
Also going to
I
have
didn't.
school out there.
I did not say, but McEwen is one of the ones that does have a bad level of service at this time, and it's not just
Well, for the capacity,
level of service.
capacity level out there, and also now we're looking at a school out there.
That's right. So that
That's why
is
we're
another
relooking.
place. But again, that's the reason I'm bringing back up, if we're talking about
Okay.
looking at this,
You
that.
can't undo your priorities.
And then this is the.
Wait, I thought you just said we can read on.
We've already funded that.
No, we haven't.
We have.
Right.
We have drawn
We have agreed that that's a priority,
That's correct.
but we have not funded, we do not do that. Somebody told me
It
last
did get
year,
funded.
until we
get funded.
actually award the contract.
It did
It's
get
in
funded.
your
It's in the
funding,
back.
it's in your funding plan that you approved last year.
And that's.
So all of those things are funded, even if we
It's in the
decide
back.
that we don't, that we.
I guess you could come back and say you don't want to do it, but we have an obligation, we have to use that money.
We'd have to
And
look
it has
at
to be in a recovery zone.
Well, I want to say to you then, because I was told whenever we were talking about, and we voted on it last year, that at the time that the contract comes up, we could agree to it or not agree
approve the
to it.
contract, there's no question
Yeah.
about that. You have the right to do that.
Yeah, when you voted on the priorities, there was no funding. Later, we came back and we did do the funding based on your funding plan. So there's basically two different votes.
So,
So, okay, I want to, just to give me some information, because I want to look back at it. I remember well the vote whenever we said these were our priorities. The funding vote, was that whenever we issued the bonds, or what?
Now, you've taken multiple votes, and you're really, in effect, you're both right. Your funding plan included this. We built funding and debt financing around the projects you told us you wanted to fund, of which Third Avenue North Extension was one of them. And it happened to also land in the recovery zone, so it's one of 3 projects that were eligible for the Super Buy America discounted, bonds that happened to be the lowest cost of money for us to get financing. So we went and built that number of the Super Buy America bonds, including those 3 projects, and trying to maximize that. So it is part of that, but we are not committed by contract. We haven't bid the project and committed in that manner. So we would have to re-examine how we allocate those funds, and especially their use within the recovery zone, to just see where we come out with all that.
Well, now, I have one more question, and then I'll stop, for the moment, of course.
We know better.
I'm so sorry. Wait, may I finish, please, and ask this? I want to carry on with this conversation,
Well,
please.
that was on the recovery zone.
Please.
For a few minutes.
I'm just confused because I wanted to know what that recovery zone included, Ann.
Could I go forward to say, then, if we only put in these bonds what we had agreed to on our funding, why do we have extra money left over here then that's just for projects? Because as I understand what you just said, there's still money in here, like the 1.4 million or the 9.8 million, that from the 9.8 million from... No, okay, I'm sorry, but for the other, there's the 44 million, obviously, that was not allocated to every single project that we had agreed to funding on, because there's some of it left here.
You've got some of those funds, but those sold in the Buy America bond category in the recovery zone need to be targeted to projects within the recovery zone. Now, we've got two projects that we have not awarded construction contracts for, have not bid yet, that are still in that recovery zone, meaning a portion of Hillsborough, the southern portion of Hillsborough, which is in the recovery zone, and the Third Avenue North Extension. So we would need to examine how we allocate those dollars if you made a different decision. I wouldn't say it's black and white. You absolutely couldn't reconfigure this at this point. But we would need to look at it, because we built the funding plan with that in mind. And now we had $3.9 million in mind for what Third Avenue North Extension roadway costs were going to cost us. So we would need to look at how that all played out and give you more feedback on if it's doable to just allocate it only to the southern portion of Hillsborough Road. I can't answer that for you definitively today, but we have the issue of spending those dollars in the recovery zone.
Ken? Yes.
Oh, okay. Great, thanks. Somewhere, let me wake up here. I remember when we were talking about Hillsborough Road and Third Avenue Extension, that there was some comment made that because of there needed to be some synergy in both those projects, because you couldn't do one without doing the other, or that if you did Hillsborough Road and then came back later and did Third Avenue Extension, it was a huge cost and you had to tear up a lot of things. So that's one of the reasons we bundled those two together, wasn't it?
I believe so. That is correct, and you can do either project without the other. But what you're doing is, it was the design, you're changing the intersection, which is now 4th Avenue, which will become 3rd Avenue, but you're changing that intersection along Hillsborough Road, and also it will be signalized in the future. So if you do Hillsborough Road as 4th Avenue is now configured, then it's at the point you do the 3rd Avenue extension, you're tearing up stuff, and plus the bridge that was mentioned, it's all a part of the 3rd Avenue extension. It is so close to Hillsborough Road that work needs to be done prior to Hillsborough Road being completed. They're just right next to each other, so we need to get that done as a part of it. And if you remember, we discussed at one time of maybe just doing the 3rd Avenue extension from Hillsborough over to 4th Avenue as a phasing type situation to get all that taken care of. We've not really tried to price that out because we were going forward with a full Third Avenue extension, but that is an opportunity that we possibly could do.
And if I may, can we get back on a priority list? Because that's not, that, at the moment, that has been set aside, and we will discuss it again when the bid comes back in. I mean, there's nothing to discuss on that until it gets bid, we look at it, and we decide if that's where we want to spend those dollars from the recovery zone. Yeah.
You said signalized?
Yes,
We have
ma'am.
a signal at the place where it's...
It will be
coming out?
signalized at the Third Avenue Extension, Hillsborough Road. Yes, ma'am. That is a part of the plan.
How far is that from the other signal?
It's good ways. It meets our requirements for signalized intersections.
Let's see, Michael?
Do we know when we're going to release the bids on these two
You just said
projects?
January and February.
January on
Now, Hillsborough's a ways off.
Hillsborough is, yeah. McEwen is dependent on the state, but
Hillsborough, what did you say? Doug?
Okay, Hillsborough Road is a ways off. We do not have certification to start right-of-way acquisition on Hillsborough Road yet. I will tell you, we did get our second contract today, back from TDOT, so we now have our contracts in place. I also received back executed copy of the Middle Tennessee Electric contract for the relocation of the utilities, our electric utilities along Hillsborough Road. And with that, then pretty quickly we'll be asking for a check for that relocations where all that work can get started as soon as possible. That's a $1.632 million, I think it is, somewhere in that range. So it's a pretty hefty amount of money.
Will that start in January, you think?
The relocations, no ma'am, we have to get some easements, guy wire, anchor easements and pole easements, but Middle Tennessee has a delay of at least 6 months typically for ordering materials, and they will not even order until we make the payment of the funds. So we're trying to look and make sure we get everything going, but as soon as we get the right-of-way acquisition certification, or certified to start right-of-way, we will be starting the right-of-way. I think there's 60-something easements right-of-way or properties that we have to deal with on Hillsborough Road. So that will take us a little time, too.
Yeah.
That comes out of the recovery zone bond fund?
The 1.6, it is a part of the southern portion of the project, the whole project, but most of the work is actually in the southern portion, so I would assume it could, but I'll have to refer to Russ as far as if it's applicable.
If the Third Avenue just costs $3.9 million, there's $11.5 million, does that mean that lower part of Hillsborough is going to cost $7.6 million? Because that, I mean,
we really haven't split Hillsborough Road.
$26 million is the total for Hillsborough.
I agree.
And we feel that's very conservative since we've
But I mean, if
changed
we're
the
talking
electric.
about the recovery zone money, and we've said that would be less the Columbia Avenue, less Columbia, which we paid, but $11.5 million. If $3.9 million is Third Avenue, then that means that little piece of Hillsborough would cost $7.6 million.
No, I think that just means that's how much you got bonded under the recovery area.
Well, but didn't we just say it has to go there?
From 96 up to Del Rio.
Yep.
I think that's a reasonable number. That's what we based it on when we did it. We looked at those costs and tried to
Right,
allocate it.
it's a little further than
So-
Del Rio, but yeah, it's going to be.
What?
That's a $26 million project. If you just do it proportionally, I think you're easily at 7.
Well, that is a lot of money for land that was completely covered underwater.
Okay,
It's not just for land, it's for the
No, I'm
roadway
just saying,
and
no, I
everything.
mean,
Okay.
for property.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that you're paying that for the property, but I mean that is a lot of money to be spent on property that was completely covered underwater.
Yeah.
Question. Eric, if I'm understanding right, what you were talking about, the Buy America bonds, that money is allocated to the recovery zone, and if something comes before us and we choose not to fund it, then where our hands are tied, though. Don't they have to go to the recovery zone?
Right.
Yeah.
What I was saying is that you've got two projects that were allocated, and that's how we built the debt financing.
Right.
If you chose to not fund one of those projects now, we would need to look at applying those to the one remaining project, which would be Hillsborough.
Or give the money back.
Guys, we need to just get off this subject. This is a whole nother day, a whole nother
I just had
time.
that
We're not
right
going to
there.
solve
So
that.
I don't-
Today,
I just
tonight,
don't-
we're talking about our priority list from this point in time forward, not from this point in time backwards. And we're talking about something that's been voted on. We can't undo the vote until such time as we look at a bid and we decide we don't want to accept that bid.
Exactly.
We can discuss it till now, and time that bid comes in, we can't make a decision until that happens. So we are wasting 45 minutes of time that we're not talking about what we're here for.
Okay, could I make my other point, and that is that, as you stated, or has been mentioned, we do not have money, we have committed money that says we're way beyond what we set as a policy for our debt. We are exceeding that by probably 40% over the next 4 years. Right now, if we do not spend another penny other than what we have already borrowed, and I'm not even sure if this includes the, what is it, 15 million that we're going to have to borrow that we've already committed to projects? I mean, we set this policy of debt service as a percent of operating expenses, and I mean, I know it's a policy, it's not a law that we have passed, but still, it's not only our policy, but it's also not only AAA cities, but AA cities and A cities, and then when we're talking about setting priorities, whenever there's no extra money, if all we do is just what we've already committed to do.
It still doesn't stop you from setting a priority,
Absolutely.
which is what we need to do. That's what we're here for.
And that is one measure among 5 or 6 benchmarks in that policy. It is not the only element of the policy. We have a comprehensive policy that has multiple benchmarks, and that is one of them.
And I want to say, there are multiple benchmarks here. To me, the two most important ones are the fund balance and the debt service ratio. This other stuff, whenever it talks about capacity and it just looks at our property value and things like that, and I've stated that the funding, the rating companies have looked at us indicating that we're fine in terms of the debt because they consider our property tax to be extremely low, and they're indicating, and their comments have been maybe not in print, but that we could double or triple our property tax and still have a good property tax. So whenever you look at anything that has to do with just our assessed value, they're talking about, they're looking at a financial decision. I'm talking about a political decision, I don't think.
And we need to get back on our subject. That's not our subject. That is not, you're discussing our debt service policy.
Okay.
We can discuss that at another time. That is not what this meeting is for. We need to stay on track, or I'm just going to get up and leave, and we can do whatever we want to do. So
I think what the policy
has nothing to do with our priorities.
My comment is, I think our priorities are probably, from last year, are probably
Well, then that's fine.
good.
Vote on the state. But then that's fine. But other people may have a question that you don't have. And so I think we should allow them to do that. And if not, then I'm fine to say we're done, because I don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question, I'm interested in taking this home and trying to look at all the projects and re-rank them in my own mind as far as where we're going. But my question would be, if we are re-ranking, how do we address, do we take out the ones that we've already have a funding plan for?
I think you have to.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
Can we, yeah.
so that's my only question.
Yeah, there's no point readdressing those since we've already done that one.
So, John.
Clyde, you want to say something?
No, I was
You have that look on your face.
No, I was just dwelling on what Kenny got through saying.
Michael?
I wonder if we could look at what our commitments are for the roads near the school
Okay.
and see what those numbers are.
You talking about the new breezeway school?
Yeah.
Yeah, new Bruceway.
you pull those numbers out of your hat? Well,
I
it's
think
a million.
the only thing we've committed so far is the
bridge,
design, which
the design.
Additional,
Is that listed, how is that listed here?
The design of
It's
the,
part of
did we
McEwen.
break that out
It's not
of
broken
the Did we break it out or not?
It's not broken out in this.
yeah, we didn't do it.
The bridge, the intersection at McEwen and Wilson Pike was somewhere around $2 million. I think it's a little over $2 million total. That's design and
Design only?
Design and construction.
design and
The
construction
total
for $2 million?
construction cost
A
was
little over $2 million.
So which,
Yeah, I mean,
It's a component of McEwen 4.
It's
what page is that
Yeah.
on?
That's from whose, things like that.
these are in alphabetical order, so,
That's one at the top.
page 42,
Streets 42.
yeah.
We do have it separated out.
She's surprised.
There we go.
There's so many sheets we've gone through this.
So 42 has that component.
At least I was right, it's a little over $2 million.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not 5.
So we get 1 million dedicated from Williamson County Schools, right?
Right.
Williamson
Correct.
County, Williamson County.
And the commitment for that 1 million from them, it seems like there was a time limit.
2 years.
2 years, that's why we've got it.
Okay.
It was a 2-year time commitment from the time they issued bonds. Is that not
We
right?
really need to encumber it within that 2 years
Right.
from when they issue. I don't believe they've issued yet.
And that would mean that we would have to do what?
We'd have to get it under contract
Okay.
by that, maybe not completely spent, but committed to the project and be moving the project forward.
You mean 1 million,
Yes.
our 1 million?
No, they
from the schools.
No, it's in 2 years.
Our additional funding we've got more flexibility on that.
Is the adequate facilities tax here that we already have,
That's from the existing.
existing
Funding.
special
Is it-
fund?
Is it that, is it 1.1? It is? Okay.
1.1 from that?
It's our
From the-
component.
But it's coming from the adequate facilities tax, which we have in the budget.
It's the existing
But
balance.
it's not our regular adequate facilities
No,
tax?
it's a whole special
That's
thing that
my
was,
point.
It's that county-generated portion.
that we get, that they've asked back, that we didn't give it to them. Now we're going to spend it. That's the good thing we did, that's exactly right.
And I said committed, maybe I need to be more general. What other road projects in that neighborhood would help alleviate problems that?
Well, the committed is that the school board will be paying for signalization at Clovercroft, is that right? Clovercroft and Wilson, and then they'll be doing the improvements in front of the school also, so.
And those are paid for directly. That's outside of, beyond the million that was committed.
Now, remember, they're also going to be doing signalization at McEwen and Wilson Pike as it now exists. We're going to have to alter that when we do our project, because we expect theirs to go up. It'll be a temporary thing, and then we'll have to alter it.
Who's paying for that signalization?
The school. The school's paying for the first one, and we'll be paying for the alteration to meet what we designed with the new bridge, et cetera.
And that's included.
That is included in the cost,
And
yes.
then the bridge is being designed, and that intersection is being designed to stay be as is when the new project gets started, so we don't have to tear up anything.
That is correct.
Redo anything. It's-
The only
so
thing
this
that-
money is going to,
The only thing
Permanent.
that could possibly change in the future would be the signal, and we have, I think the board said that they were fine with with span wire. If you ever wanted to change to mast arms in the future, that would be probably the only major change.
play with that from home.
Margaret?
Could we speak just a minute about this one? This is the one that was in our box.
That's the only.
That's over, throw it away.
The black
Well, it says,
Don't believe anything it says.
It was an earlier version.
That's the first mistake I've ever made. I gave you the wrong copy.
April Fool.
okay, Dave, when we talk about this is what we have already prioritized.
Yes, ma'am.
Hillsborough Road, Columbia Avenue, McEwen, Phase 3. We can mark off Columbia Avenue. So now we've got Hillsborough Road, McEwen, and whatever the next thing is.
The ones that are shaded are your funding plan, basically. 1, 2, 3, and 6.
So are we
All in your
looking at
funding
this to change this or approve it and go on with it?
Review, maybe is a better word.
What?
A review,
Okay.
review of our current.
The ones that are funded, which would be McEwen, and all of Hillsborough Road hadn't been funded, and
Well, it's in
Third
your funding
Avenue,
plan.
It's in our funding.
Wait, we have not borrowed all,
One,
we have not borrowed all
the final
money for
piece of
that.
borrowing on Hillsborough has not taken place, but
Right.
what is shaded, priorities 1, 2, 3, and 6, were in the funding plan you approved a year ago.
Right.
Correct.
Well, is there some reason we should change that?
Well, we really can't.
Well, then why are we talking about it?
We're not. We're just saying this is what we did last year. This is last year's plan, and that's how we approved the funding.
So what the mayor is saying, I think, is every other project is up to change of priority.
Yeah, so we might want to move one up to another
Right.
spot.
But keep in mind, you still got McHatcher as your overall number one, but we're through funding it.
We
so.
funded
Right,
that $5
right.
million, that's our
So
commitment.
that's, to me, not even...
So what you need to do is
There.
look at every item other than 1, 2, 3, and 6.
Yeah,
And rank them 1 to, we're going to probably do the same thing, 1 through 10. So I guess we do it in reverse numerical order, is that how
No,
we
just
do it?
give us your priorities. We'll do the reverse numerical
Just rank them
order.
1 through 10.
Your favorite is number 1.
Okay,
number is number one.
to avoid confusion from last year. Send us, if this is the way we're going, send us your top 10 priority projects. Rank them as your number 1, 2, 3, 4, through 10. We will convert the numbers.
And don't include...
Make sure that you do 10. 'Cause otherwise, as the mayor says, it skews things, which is correct, and he does not want us to accept it unless you have all 10, at least 10 ranked.
Hear that, Mike?
One,
Don't include 1, 2, 3, and 6.
Let me raise one question since you talked about it just a minute ago. This McEwen Wilson Pike improvement, the piece that is part of the Breezeway School component that we've essentially identified the funding between the county funding and the adequate facilities tax. Can we look at that, or should we look at that as a funded project at this point? I mean, I don't, for your priority's sake, I think we ought to get on the same page and agree that it's either funded or how you want to look at it.
The intersection.
The intersection improvement, the $2 million project.
For the school.
It's funded.
But is that...
This is what I'm concerned.
But that's just a piece,
Page
that's just a
42.
piece of Project 7, though,
Right,
isn't
it would likely decrease the cost of that a little bit because we're moving elements of that project forward. But just for the sake of I just want to make sure that, this would be a pretty high priority because we've essentially committed to it in an agreement to the schools. But we've also pretty well funded it because we've identified or earmarked the facilities money.
Be
Leave
specific.
it in so we can
Page
vote for it.
42 is funded, page 43 is not.
Okay.
So that's
We didn't
the
net
bar.
out the $2 million.
No, because it's not a direct, just
Yeah.
subtraction.
Yeah, it's not going to be quite that clean.
Okay, the other question is, how do you name, do you name the projects this way right here?
Project
That's
name.
what we
Okay.
tried to do is
Good.
name them, yes.
That's what I want to hear.
Okay.
Or we can, I think
No.
last year we kind of sent you a blank
Yes,
thing and
we'll
you
do
filled
that.
in the blank.
Right.
We can send you that
But
again.
you got to know what to fill in as your name, as the name of it. Do you see what I'm saying?
We
Are
will
gonna
give you
go-
the projects with the names on there.
Oh, okay.
We can have this ranking, that can just be blank and you can fill in the number as you like.
Do
Okay,
that.
okay. Now, are you just going to do
It
these?
will
or
be a
no?
long list because
It's a long list.
streets, it's administration, it's
Yeah, it's,
all those
But we
things.
are only asking for a top 10, right?
Your top 10 within the general capital
But
categories. So
that
that means the
includes
water ones will be.
parks.
that's right.
Anyway,
Includes parks, fire halls, et cetera.
Fire hall.
are we going to stick to this for the whole
And you
book?
asked a question, anything but water, wastewater, sewer, and storm. So
Yeah,
if you've got questions on the other things that are on here, this is a good time to ask.
The list will look like this, but it'll be updated.
It will
Because
be
there are
a
projects
longer list.
that are in this book that aren't on this list, because this is the updated book that you have in front of
There
you.
are- there are
So
new
it'll look
projects.
like this, but it'll have more projects in it because there are more projects now than there were.
Absolutely. The only thing that's in the book that will not be on that list are those that have their own funding. As the mayor has indicated, stormwater, reclaimed water, and sewer.
We're not talking about
Any type of additional fire station will be based on any development, right, at this point. We are not in the need of fire stations unless they're...
Fire department will disagree with that.
you need one at West Haven.
That's right.
Okay, so
Yes,
Oh,
Margaret?
but we already taken
1, 2, 3, and 6.
care of Carlisle Lane,
No.
Boardwalk
No.
signalization.
No, we have design funded, we do not have construction funded. Design and right-of-way funded, but not construction.
So we're gonna prioritize 1 through 10, with the exception of 1, 2, 3, and 6.
Correct.
You're gonna get a new sheet
You'll have,
that will pull those funded items out of here.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to have a further discussion about funding plans, et cetera, you can do that, but for the prioritization exercise, we're going to pull out the ones that you funded in the previous funding plan, and you can prioritize the remaining projects, which will be, the list will look like this, but it will have additional projects in it.
Many additional.
Many, yeah.
Many projects.
now,
Yeah.
so if we're going to look at these, hey, is there anybody here that wants to speak to any of these issues that we need to
Now's your time.
talk about?
You wanna-
Because I want
you
to talk
wanna-
about McEwen 4.
Make your pitch.
Because
Make your
the,
pitch. This
yeah,
is where you do
and
it.
this is where I want to hear from other people. I want to hear why. Because, well, McEwen 4, of course, other boards and planning commissions have agreed to allow the development over there. And we've got McKay's Mill, we've got the back part of McKay's Mill, we've got Avalon, then we've got meat of Avalon. And then, of course, on the other side, into the, east of Wilson Pike, then you have Breezeway. And then across from Breezeway, you've got a subdivision called Chardonnay, but that's in the county, but it's still there. So we have all that traffic coming down, and we've got buses and school buses, then we also have the new school coming out there. So I just want to say, when you look at prioritizing it, remember about all the development that's there. Remember about Phase 3, going to be started here in the next month, I'm hoping, or so. And then with that new school and with all the development out there. So just pay attention to it. And I would also ask that you, if you haven't been out there lately, drive down. Joe York's done a great job with Streets Department improving the lines on there and resurfacing it and doing a lot of things that have helped it and help people see at night. So we've got a better situation out there than we've had before. We still have a lot of traffic going up and down there. I would ask that you drive up and down there during rush hour.
All right,
morning and night.
And I would like to say that we've been waiting for that signalization at Carlisle in 96 forever. And we need that intersection fixed. And we also need to think about South Carruthers, because we've got 3 big neighborhoods going in out there on that little bitty road. And we talked about that, I think, at length the other day with Chris, and he encouraged us to maybe think of two lanes.
We talked about maybe dividing South Carruthers up into more phases.
I think Phase 1 goes to the bridge, Phase 2 is the bridge to Long Lane, and that how it's laid out.
The book is not split up. It's all
one, but we did talk at the last CIP meeting about
That's
doing
not
that as
necessarily
some
true,
options.
though, because if you look at it, there are 2 pages on South Carruthers. One includes the whole thing, one goes from the bridge to Long Lane.
No, one of them goes across. One that you're talking about that goes from the bridge to Long Lane. That's the project that Ladd Park, the development project, is required to do right now per their planning committee. planning commission
The
requirements.
project that the city is doing takes us all the way to Long Lane through the existing road already built as part of Ladd Park. So, and then the phase two one would be from that point where it takes off from South Crothers in that subdivision road down to Long Lane.
Yeah.
Well, then, page 47, wouldn't that be the one that we would talk about
Yes,
phasing?
That's the one we,
that's the one you have talked about phase.
at CIP last meeting, we talked,
Yes.
that was brought up as, are there options, the land?
Do you have ideas about?
Just one thing keep in mind, any of these type projects, especially these bigger projects like this, are all subject to being able to be phased in some manner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't know how you want to phase it necessarily, but it can be phased. But any of the big ones can be phased. McKeon Phase 4 is Phase 4, so, but it can be phased. In fact, we've talked about phasing in as only building 2 lanes.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question, because then it confused me. On Street 46, which is South Crothers through Ladd Park, it doesn't say that this is done by the developer, and it shows a full $8.5 million expenditure.
Well, if you look at the revenue, it says paid for by developer.
Yeah, but this is a long way around. This is even a different route.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't it?
No, that's the route.
Never mind, I'm sorry, you're right. I missed that.
The Eastern Flight Parks,
This point right here ties to that.
That's
It comes
that.
around here.
Okay.
But then on the next page, your picture includes that as well, though.
No.
You see where it turns to the
See the
left?
sharp
That's what I just had.
curve there.
I
That other
just thought
one
your lines
picks
were
up.
wrong.
No,
So that's,
Yeah, something.
Here?
Not right.
yeah. It picks up.
It goes here.
Where, Joe?
One curves to the right and the other curves to the left.
Stand up, sit down, fight.
you made a line this way. Where you make your line?
That'd be South Carruthers.
Oh, yeah.
North is to the top of the page in both of them. The north part of the page, or Street 46, is the very, very southern part of the 47, and then it goes on down to Long Lane, so.
So,
Go back and look at that, though. One of them's got it going to the east, and one of them has it going to the west of that.
Where it's, on page 47, where it turns sharply to the left, that is connecting to Alfred Ladd Road or whatever it is.
That's the subdivision road.
If
So
you
we're not
took
building
46 at that point where it turned and attached that at that point, that would be the continuation of the road.
Okay, so really, it won't,
that's not Carruthers.
it won't be
That southern
Carruthers.
portion.
No, it's a
So
part of
why
the
do we have
agreement
that
that we
on there?
entered into with Ladd Park, in that we have to build a small portion of that roadway, which is a part of the subdivision road, and then we have to repave the rest of it. So that's part of the agreement that we entered into with Ladd Park.
Now, we
I'm
certainly,
going to mark that out, because it's confusing.
we certainly could do 2 lanes on that and phase that, and just like McEwen, we could do 2. Because,
Well, again, the point of this exercise
but I'm thinking,
is
but
to...
Make your wish list.
Make your wish list, and then, after you make your wish list, then let's take those wishes and say, okay, how can we get them done?
right.
How, is there a way to do it? Can we or can we not get it done? Is it, if it costs, this list says it costs $18.2 million. Now, is there a way that we can do it for less? And then you talk about that. I mean, but there's, if this were item 37, we wouldn't bother to be talking about it necessarily. So, again, it's the wish list first, it's then we have to figure out, can we afford it, can we build it, and we have to tell, and that's another thing, if you can't afford to do it, if we decided we can't afford to do it, we have to tell everybody, this is number 2 on our priority list, but right now we can't afford to do it. And if you want us to do it, there are options, but it's up to you all to tell us that.
But it makes sense to me to say, well, there's options here, like you said, David, phases, and Eric, you said phases, and there's options, so when we're reprioritizing, we need to remember that. because we can do 2 lanes rather than 4. So that might say, well, then I might move that up because it's a possibility. Because if I'm thinking we have to do 4 lanes, then how logical is that? It might not be logical. But if I can say that we could possibly do 2 lanes at Carruthers, 2 lanes at McEwen, then the priority seems to take a higher, number with me.
I want to jump to parks right quick. I see where there's a grant that we should hear from, Tennessee Transportation Enhancement Grant by November 1st. Have we heard from that? Will we get that?
Which one are you talking about?
No,
that's about a year from now.
2011, okay.
Yeah, that's the one
So I
we
just want to know if
submitted.
there's any money in the pipeline grant-wise for that project.
We have
It's
just
3
made the
under
proposal.
parks.
3 under parks, page 3.
Yeah, what we've done is we've just submitted that. We don't know if we're going to be successful or not. We've submitted the proposal, and I think the board just approved that last meeting, actually, for us to submit that. And it's probably about a year away to know the answer to that.
Well,
That element, now we've said we want to continue to move forward on the project.
Yeah, that helps in
question though,
determining.
we've already voted under small projects.
For $369,000.
So,
Should it be shaded?
are we going to take this off or leave it in?
Should that be shaded?
You don't
This
take
is
it
the,
out.
this is the park. This is not, this is the whole park, everything that's involved with it.
So
Yeah,
what
it's
page
much
are we looking
larger.
at?
Oh, it's larger.
What page are we looking
Oh, I
at?
see.
Page 3 in Parks, under Parks.
That's a good question.
Construction of historic 18-foot DBST road parking areas to
So I guess we're
serve.
phased.
Because we don't want to really put small projects in here.
Which
Look at
is
that.
not.
How about the signal at George Patton Road in Mallory? That's not in here.
Funded through your small projects.
Right,
all right.
so that's totally separate.
So
That won't even appear in here.
You've got 3 small projects that we
Committed
have
to.
moved forward on.
Well, it's
This
showing up.
369, which was funded out of hotel motel tax, actually, for that roadway. The Nickel Mill Road, which was funded through that project savings component that we identified, and then the stabilization, General George Patton, which is the only true small project funded one. That was 385 that we funded from that one.
Now, those projects are in the book, and I think staff had I guess we were a little confused on what we needed to show, because even though you've committed to it, it's not been started, so we wanted to at least show anything that's still there. We did take out, like, the Columbia Avenue, since it's basically completed, but anything that's funded that's not yet started is still in the book.
Okay.
Just so you could have the project information, too.
If you want, or if you wanted to re-vote on it, or whatever you wanted to do.
No, I'm just getting something.
On the Bicentennial Park, on the
What page?
one, that grant from the CMAQ fund grant, that's still there, and we still have to make a 20% match. Now, that's kind of hard to delineate from here.
All the other stuff.
Yeah. So the question is, can we fund that 20% and not, which we can, and not the rest of it? And if that's the case, is that $70,000, or I guess that'd be...
Under you see the bottom of the red news, Mayor, the 146, and the bottom of the CIP, under 2011.
The 146, yeah.
146 is our max. You have 80,000 in the RTP, and there's 504,000 out of the CMAQ. So our match for everything is 146 for that project.
Okay. That's our match.
Yes, sir, for both grants.
So Lisa, is the Fieldstone Farm Tunnel falling under your category here? Fieldstone Farm Tunnel. Dana's not here. In his absence, I just want to make sure we
The
have
tunnel
a...
falls underneath
Okay.
either one.
I thought
So,
we'd already decided.
We-
We've
What-
decided to fund that, haven't we?
that should, I mean, that seemed
That
like,
got funded.
small potatoes compared to what we've been...
But that got funded.
I think it got
That was
funded.
This is
approved.
really an operating cost, isn't it? I mean,
Clarification.
Okay.
we already agreed to take it over and...
We agreed to take it over, but I don't know that,
On the
did y'all,
Bicentennial Park, the
did y'all agree to do-
146,000 is hotel motel tax.
As
That's
of right
matching.
now, that's what the match would come from, is what staff had identified. Now, we'd have to go back.
But
and
we
take-
have to, I mean, we really, I mean, again, on things like that, if it's identified, you still have to sort of prioritize.
It's on this- yeah,
Because then we
here.
can say, okay, it's a priority, we pull it from hotel motel tax, but we have to make sure we look at hotel motel tax and make sure that we can pull it from that. I mean, that again, this isn't, we're not, and I do know that, Bevan, you're right, if it's 2-lane road instead of a 4-lane road, we can cut, $6 million out of a project, it might change the priority listing to some degree. It really doesn't to me, but it might to you all, because I'd like to look at those without that. I don't like to put dollars signs to it, because I want to look at dollars later. You all may look at it differently. But like this case, I mean, it's a priority, it needs to be done. It does make a difference if money could come from hotel motel tax. But again, we have to rank them and take a look at them. Because there's a lot of things actually in here that we can use hotel motel tax for, and we have a limited amount of hotel motel tax. So that's sort of where that comes from. Now, I guess we could possibly, and I don't want to get real confusing, list them from a priorities based upon funding. In other words, X amount of projects could come from hotel motel tax. Maybe we should rank them from that. Of course, the only thing that would come from hotel motel tax would be parks.
Fire halls.
And fire, no, not fire hall. No, that's facilities tax.
Just really would be parks.
The streetscape.
Parks and some elements of streetscape that we've identified.
Yeah, that's right.
So-
Hotel motel.
Now, this is one, this component with the CMAQ funding, it gets a little blurred with Third Avenue extension, because there's some components of that help us with that match, because part of what you want to be able to do is tie into the street and pedestrian network as well. So that's kind of where those two meet, and so that's one of the things I think we were looking at with Third Avenue, so.
And like y'all have already spoke tonight, once you bid that project, those are the elements going to be itemized so that you can see the cost as far as park compared to Third Avenue.
So we may need to give you a little more of a breakout on that component, because that was one of there's sort of some leverage there that what we had planned to do on Third Avenue North Extension, at least in part, could be applied to the match here. So that's kind of lost in this, because this just looks at the entirety of Bicentennial Park. So we'll get you some more.
And, another thing could be less based upon
Yes.
that amount of this coming off.
Assuming you do Third Avenue North Extension, as we've talked about it, I think there's a component of that, we got to break that out.
I also think now that, I don't think there's a lot of examples of this, but again, this is our second year for doing this, and we'll get better as we go along, but to know where there are matching dollars or grant dollars or something, because then we're leveraging our dollars, in this case, significantly leveraging our dollars, and that may make a difference as to how we look at things, and I think that's true. In this case, you're 80-20, that may make you look a little different at things than if you were 100% funding it. So I don't know of any other places that we have matching dollars that are, when does this CMAQ, you got an extension?
When does,
But
what's
it
the
runs out.
timeframe?
2014.
2014.
Would you throw impact fees into that, John?
Do what now?
Would you throw impact fees into that?
Places where we could pull impact, well, now that is listed in here.
But let me also
funding
say,
on that. There's not a lot of money in impact fee.
that's right, on the road impact fee, as the budget that we have approved for 2011, it will be in the red, and we have committed $2.5 or $2.9 million a year for debt service out of that every year, and as far as I know, it hasn't brought in $2.9 million any year ever, and we've committed that we are paying debt service for the roads out of that.
Then that makes it more interesting to me then to look at a road that's going to generate impact fees. If we're $2.5 million in the red and we've already overcommitted and all the other stuff that's going along with that makes I could come along and prioritize a road that's generating the impact fees.
Well,
provided it doesn't cost more than they generate.
Carruthers Phase 2 will generate a, you-know-what, full of impact.
It won't generate 18 million, though.
No, but it will generate a lot of, I'm talking about Carruthers from
I understand.
Liberty to McEwen.
It still won't generate 18 million for it, much less to pay off any of our other debt that we already got.
But it was more than you would have had if you didn't do it.
That's correct.
Yeah, but
I have one more question. That was, last time we ranked these, we had input from staff as far as what they, from their professional viewpoint, what you thought the ranking should be. And I know that our rankings didn't necessarily agree with yours, but it'd be good to see those rankings again based on, obviously a real working knowledge from an engineering standpoint, so on and so forth.
We can do that. As you're doing your rankings, we'll do ours.
And now you're going to rank parks, too?
We'll rank everything that you're...
We sort of have a CIP working group of the various department directors in that group. We'll kind of have them all do that. We did that last year.
You want that before you do your ranking?
Well, no.
Not necessarily. We want to compare, right?
It'll be all right, but I can do
That's
mine.
the question.
We can get it to you in advance if you'd like us to.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, go ahead and say that.
I
Go ahead and do it.
Professional judgment means something.
We'll do that.
Anything else?
You want to set any deadline for when you're going to vote?
We'll do it. We'll do it.
Week after you get us on the list.
So we'll do ours and give you a week?
You do yours and do it. Give
What we're going to do is we're going to take all the projects in the CIP book that need to be listed for ranking. We will also, at the staff level, do a ranking of those same projects. We will get the list to you. It'll take us a little while to get the list and the rankings, but we will get this to you as soon as we can. But it will be all the projects that are not funded or not in the funding plan and that are in the book, other than stormwater, reclaimed water, water, and sewer. They all have revenue funds, so they will not be on the list, but everything else in this book will be in the list.
Perfect.
If we're talking about projects, I was trying to think of something that we could do that would help existing roads, the little Southwind and 96.
Southwind traffic.
I mean, it wouldn't cost anything.
Beasley Court Connector.
Yeah, see, that would be another one maybe, but I mean, no, this one, we're talking less than, I think the last time I looked, $60,000.
And what was that to do, to widen?
We're still looking at, you're talking about 96 intersection with Southwind. We're still looking at that, and do we have, I think we're getting a survey or something.
What we're talking about, yeah.
We're getting a survey as part of another project.
We're trying to see if we can do that in-house,
Okay,
if possible.
it would be cheap.
I think we can just do it, but
Well, we think there's a possibility to restripe it and
we
not
want
have
to
to.
be able to do away with the lead lag signalization, where you have left turns going the same time out of Southwinds and out of
If
Shopton.
you just restrike, I don't know what you're talking about, you might just be able to restrike.
Well,
It's got that median there.
That's what we're looking at, but you got
Meaning they have
overlaps.
to,
You got possibly overlaps of the lanes themselves as they're making the movement, so we have to look at that.
That's cheap, but
But it may
could help.
end up being just a restriping, we don't know right now.
So we're not going to send anything in until we get y'all's
We'll give you ours and the ranking sheet, and you can go from there, and we'll give you about a week after we get ours.
That'd be
out.
good.
Does that sound okay?
Just don't make it due on Thanksgiving week.
That's true.
One side or the other of Thanksgiving.
Be the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that one, too.
John.